Everybody, and welcome to the Transportation Committee meeting of August 10th, 2016. I'm Councilmember Mike Bonham, the chair of the committee. I'm joined by my colleagues Nuri Martinez of the 6th District and David Drew of the 4th District. We are going to get started. This is our first meeting since council recess in July. So when I do the multimodal roll call, it's been a long period of time since the last meeting, so I anticipate that everybody will raise their hands for each item. Since our last meeting, so since June, who here has taken the train or the subway? The bus? Who here has commuted by bicycle? Okay, I'm seeing the same hands each time. Pedestrians? You're all pedestrians. I have to do this every time. Okay. Let's get down to business. I am going to start with public comment. There are multiple cards from a couple people, so I'm going to give a maximum of 3 minutes to them. Mr. Herman, Mr. Spindler, Ms. Ramirez, you each have 3 minutes. Starting now. All of you come up to the table at the same time, please. Ladies first, sir. Please come up to the chairs.
Thank you very much.
Please come up to the table.
Excuse me, Sergeant Arms, are you harassing me?
Oh, brother.
Are you harassing me? Don't threaten me. Back off. Thank you. Back off. Damn it.
Mr. Herman, if you continue to disrupt the meeting, you're going to be evicted from the room. One more, when you're not on microphone, when I acknowledge you for public comment, and you're gone. Ms. Ramirez, you may begin. 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I've discovered a company who is committing fraud, waste, and abuse and negligence against our legal law-abiding citizens and our bus and transit passengers. Now, this has been going on for 1 year. The name of the company is Shelter Clean Services and Triangle Services. The workers drive a white Ford pickup 150 with a logo on the company, on the truck. It carries bus, hub area cleaning supplies. I have complained to the company, Jasmine, and the schmuck regarding the nosy, jealous, diabolical, racist, hate-mongering, wetback female employee who drives a white pickup truck number 1374. She is supposed to clean the bus stops, the bus canopy
Ms.
area.
Ramirez, which item are you referring to?
Public comments.
And how does this relate to Department of Transportation?
They're supposed to be cleaning the bus areas, the transit areas, all the areas that buses pull up at, and that's one of the biggest problems, that they're not cleaning these areas. Yeah. So again, these she's supposed to clean the bus stops, the bus canopy areas, the bus benches, and the glass or the plexiglass that covers the advertisement banners on the bus stops. For over 1 year, while homeless, this female wetback employee by Shelter Clean and Triangle Services that promises to deliver professionalism. I'm sorry, did you say 3 minutes or 1 minute?
3 minutes.
I'm going to hang his ass. And it promises to clean these bus areas and bus canopies for all passengers. They have failed to oversee her, nor check her work, nor take the complaint seriously, nor hold her accountable for the illegal actions against me and against the passengers. She's continuously gang stalking me and pops up wherever I go, either to the female bathroom at the Grand Park Center and or everywhere at the bus stops. Furthermore, not only does she pop up everywhere that I go to, but she is supposed to be working. She has popped up again at the bus depots at Little Tokyo and on First Street and Broadway, etc. Now, she has failed to clean the bus stop areas in front of the LA City Hall or the Grand Park. And I see her flailing the rag, and I see her all the time on her white cell phone. Again, she is supposed to be emptying the trash cans, which they overflow at night. Many of your city employees, your county employees that all converge at the city bus stops here at the City Hall, out on Spring Street and also First Street, are overtaken with all the trash that is all around them and the stench and the rats that are around this area, especially at night. And again, the trash is incredible. The bus benches people use those to sleep on, and most of them are drug addicts that do sleep on them, and many of them carry MRSA, bed bugs, scabies, staph infections. I worry that these people are going to catch infection. So many times, yes, I do bring Clorox. I disinfect like I do with my Clorox and my Lysol sprays. I do spray it because I believe in being neighborly. You've got to keep the places clean. Even though I don't know many of the passengers who work for the city or the county, we must be neighborly. We must clean the places so they won't catch anything. Being homeless, I know how it is. So we must protect our neighbors.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Spindler, you have a total of 3 minutes for any item on the agenda or for a general comment, which is restricted to matters before this committee.
Yeah. So you're Nazi degenerate scum, also known as the public transportation people who write these tickets, are at it again. So the goddamn sweeper doesn't go by, and they're writing these sweeping tickets 5 minutes after the clock starts without the truck going around. So now you go on the website, and they show that they didn't sweep all the streets, but they failed to put the streets down that they skipped. So are we paying people to sweep streets that they're not really sweeping? Yes. So these people with these parking enforcement, they're out there measuring shit with tape to see how far away you are from a meter. They're over there marking your tires with chalk. You know, they're like a bunch of little cockroaches with little white cars. And you know, they go around and they're looking for anything they can write a ticket on. And that's why people don't come here for business. That's why people don't stop and eat. That's why people don't shop. Because you're worried about getting $6 an hour for parking and $78 for a fine. So I challenged both of these tickets. There's two of them. They said I was 15 feet from a fire hydrant in a non-red zone. So they don't answer. So now the city's got to litigate it. And then, like she said, you go around to these transportation hubs, and they're goddamn filthy. Trash all over the place. Scabies all over the place, rats. The rats sit and wait for the buses. That's the way it is, especially in the valley. Now, I'm not talking about Encino, like where Councilman Peppa Pig. Now, on his benches, they're clean. You go all over the benches in Encino, every goddamn one of them's clean. But you start going north of the 101 freeway, you start seeing those benches, the goddamn place looks like it's downtown Beirut. So they really need to start taking these people and giving them better services on that. The buses never show up. The dashes never show up. But I go down to Havenhurst, I go down to Ventura, all the buses show up on time. And you know why that is? It's because if these districts are in the wealthier districts, you get the services. The schmucks, they don't get anything. And yet you get more taxes out of the schmucks because per capita taxes are regressive. So that's the funny part. We got all these buses and things, and most of the Hebrews over in the area, they drive their Maseratis to work. So it just doesn't make sense. I think you got to start listening to Antonio Ramirez. I think she's onto something. She's breaking a big story.
Such passion for
Mr. Herman, you have
passion.
3 minutes total for any item on the agenda
Passion.
or for any matter before the jurisdiction of this committee.
Correct. Such as in item 7, which reflects the city attorney's report regarding 87.55, which prohibits the parking of vehicles displaying a F sale sign on their placard advertising. Well, let me tell you about an F placard sign. Right now, Weezer's not even here in his seat. What a fucker. Anyways, going back to that topic, I put my F sign up because I don't want no motherfucker. Sir, can't sleep in your vehicle. And you know what I say?
Mr. Herman, stop pounding on the table, please.
It's not pounding the table. That's knocking, sir.
Mr. Herman.
It's a knock. I'm reflecting how officers sometimes say, sir, you cannot park here and sleep. But you know what I say? Fuck you! I have a right to sleep in my vehicle because I've been homeless. By design, by the city's integrity of the TMU and the TRO people who fucked me out of my home and put me in a car to sleep. Now, if I want to park and sleep in my fucking car because I'm tired of sleeping 3 fucking hours and I come up with this type of rage, there's a reason. I have an attitude like you, fools. And you want to slow me down from my activism, my participation, as I turn in my paper stating I want accommodations under Title III, ADA, and you refuse that to allow me my 5 real fucking minutes in this agenda? That's hilarious. Wait until I file another grievance on this issue. We're entitled to 5 minutes, and you have only announced us for 3 minutes. So in regards to that, going back on item 7 where it says F for signs, fuck you! Now going on to item number CD 13 of item number 3. A resolution relative to the establishment on the 205 North Occidental Boulevard. I went to Occidental School, by the way, to learn something. Learn how to deal with fucking bullshit. BS, in short. That's an acronym. BS, big shit, bullshit, puto shit, all that stuff. Y yo puedo hablar español, porque antes cuando yo vive en Boyle Heights, güey, nunca tenemos problemas como hoy. Pero hoy tenemos muchos problemas con el lugar de carros, lugar donde debe vivir, donde lugar donde la gente no quiere escuchar la otra gente que viven en nuestros lugares para la ley, babosos. Now going to item 1. General Manager of Los Angeles Department of Transportation, DOT, to present verbal report relative to the department's ongoing projects and programs, transit services offered by the Department of State Mobility. Let me tell you something. Programmatic access, deal with it. Programmatic access, deal with it.
Time is up. Thank you. Okay. Colleagues, my recommendation would be that several items we could move on consent. Items 2 through 8, unless there's any objections. Seeing none, items 2 through 8 are approved, which leaves for this regular meeting of the Transportation Committee items 1 and 9. So let's begin with item 1.
Item 1 is General Manager from DOT to present a verbal report relative to the department's ongoing projects and programs and recognizing LA DOT employees for outstanding service.
Good afternoon, committee members. Thank you very much for allowing me to give a report, and I'd like to use my time this month initially to recognize some outstanding performers at LADOT, and happy to take any questions you might have after we do that. So first and foremost, and if you could just stand when I say your name, I'm pleased to recognize Senior Traffic Supervisor Manuel Garcia. Sergeant Manny Garcia began his career with the city as a traffic officer in 1999 and was promoted to the rank of sergeant in 2008. Throughout his tenure, Sergeant Garcia has consistently demonstrated a level of commitment and dedication to professional conduct that is exemplary for others to follow. He routinely goes above and beyond the call of duty by adjusting his shift as needed to assist in any way that he can. If there is a task or duty that remains unfilled, Sergeant Garcia is the go-to person to get things done. Sergeant Garcia possesses a boundless energy, which he displays daily as he performs his job. He is responsible for the supervision of 2 squads of part-time traffic officers, 1 squad of full-time traffic officers, providing oversight of the Western Area TOKI pilot program, which stands for Traffic Officers at Key Intersections, and he is also the facility maintenance coordinator and equipment manager for the 126 full and part-time traffic officers assigned to his area. LADOT is grateful for his outstanding leadership and dedication throughout the past 17 years. Thank you, Sergeant Garcia. And next, from our Mobility Management Bureau that oversees parking, administration, pipeline franchises, transit services, and shared mobility, I am delighted to recognize a special individual, Rosemary Durkee. Ms. Durkee is an administrative clerk in the Parking Adjudication Division since March of 2006. Throughout this time, she has dedicated herself to providing exceptional customer service and has been an extremely helpful team player. Rosemary's organizational skills, attention to detail, and tireless work ethic make the West Los Angeles Parking Adjudication relocation to their new office on Westwood Boulevard last August a success. Her colleagues and management appreciate her work and contributions. Thank you so much, Rosemary. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions that any of you might have.
Well, first of all, thanks to Manny and to Rosemary for your service with the city. Manny, since '99? And Rosemary, what year did you join the city? 2006. Thank you both. Thank you. Colleagues, any questions for the general manager about anything? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, that brings us to item number 9.
Item number 9 is the DOT and Bureau of Street Services report in response to a Bon and Buscaino motion relative to parking violations on street cleaning days and related matters.
Welcome, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Got ITA, DOT, Street Services. Let me just sort of set this one up a little bit. For those who are unfamiliar with the issue, this issue has come about largely as the result of two things. Plaintive cries from constituents throughout the city for common sense and the recommendations of the Parking Reform Working Group, both of which have said, why can't we use technology to make sure that once a street has been swept, or if a street is not going to be swept, that we don't issue tickets and that we make that parking available to folks again. I think we all have heard from constituents who got ticketed for parking in a street sweeping zone after the street sweeper has gone by. And one of the priorities for the Parking Reform Working Group was try to figure out a way to make that no longer the situation. So this item was in committee, I believe it was back in June, and the collective report was not exactly up to snuff, so we asked folks to go back and take a look at it again. And I just want to frame this as, because the report is very technical, and it needs to be because it's about technology and the agencies working together, but I want to give it a frame. And this is really about the city and how it does customer service. And it is really about the city meeting what is a fairly basic technological challenge. You know, I get constant alerts, text messages on my phone that tell me about every street closure or missing child or loud noise in El Segundo or Culver City, which border my district. But I get very, very little from LAPD. And this is an example of something that we can do, use technology, make government a little more friendly for folks, get it off their backs and on their sides, and be more customer friendly. So I'm eager to sort of get into the weeds on the report and give a little more direction. Who's going to start off in summarizing it?
I will start out,
Okay.
Council Member. And first of all, Ron Lorenzen, Assistant Director of Bureau of Street Services. And I'd like to begin by thanking everybody that's been working on this. As you have indicated, this is something that the city needs to do. We have done some research. There's no other city in the United States of this size that's done something like this. So what we have found is that this is a challenging issue. I know the city's up to the challenge, and I just would like to begin by thanking a whole bunch of people that are at this table and actually in front of us as well. Not only you, Councilman, but the rest of your committee, and the mayor, of course, and the working group for putting this out to us in the first place, and the CLA's office for working very hard with us, and of course the Department of Transportation, and especially to the Information Technology Agency, who has come in fairly recently to really, I think, get us over the hump on what was causing perhaps some impediments to our moving forward when we were working on this before. So just really quickly, I'll give a quick background. As you have indicated, this is, as a result, we have been asked to do this from the Parking Reform Group, and we have very diligently been working on that. Now, there's a few things that have happened, and I will talk about the successes that have occurred so far. As you know, the original impetus was to have GPS sensors and GPS location systems onto the city's 100 approximate sweepers. These are in the Bureau of Street Services Street Maintenance Division sweepers. We have more than 100 sweepers, but those other sweepers aren't involved with the street sweeping programs. It's resurfacing and other things. We put that out to contract. There was a little bit of an issue with the contract, so unfortunately the contract wasn't let when we would have hoped it to be, and wasn't actually awarded until early this year. We began the process of installing those with the General Services Department, who is also a partner in this now as well. And I will address that a little bit more in detail in just a second. As we speak, all of the 100 sweepers have the GPS and the sensor equipment on the equipment. The ORPAC, which is the vendor, indicated that there needed to be a commissioning period of approximately 30 to 60 days, which has occurred on 92 of our machines. So 92 of our machines are now communicating with their program, ORPAC's program, totally commissioned with real-time data that is at a level that will allow the Bureau of Street Services to do what we had originally envisioned, which to use that data to make our routing and our routes more efficient, to create efficiencies in our street sweeping program that may include part of the directive from the committee was around schools and other particularly like restaurants at certain times of the day, to be able to allow the Bureau to work with DOT in the future and perhaps better serve those areas that need time windows at different times of the day. So the Bureau is ready to move forward with that data to start doing those things that the Bureau had envisioned in the beginning. And just so everybody knows, in our funding package for this year's funding, we asked for some funding that would supply backup for equipment on those machines, as well as service GSD with a little bit of money to keep our equipment working. Unfortunately, because of the hard decision we had to make, the only thing that was funded was the subscription service for ORPAC. So as we speak, we are receiving that. Now, the Bureau, DOT, have been working very hard at how do we build a program that addresses the needs of what you have requested, which is to build a system that will notify those residents in areas that have posted street sweeping. It says immediately in the notice. I'm just going to say at some period after the street sweepers have gone by to allow people to again park. It wasn't until Mr. Ross's Information Technology Agency came to us and said they could assist us that we really could see something that we could actually put together on this. And I again want to thank ITA because they really have stepped forward in the last couple of weeks and allowed us to put this joint report to you. So where we are right now is that DOT, the Bureau of Street Services, and ITA are going to work together starting today. Actually, we've already started. We've been collaborating for a long time to determine what resources are necessary, both human and monetary, and come back to this committee in October with those needs so that we may then decide how we're going to move forward. But I also like to say that we have been collaborating, and it has been challenging, but we have been working together. It hasn't been something where we've been fighting. We've just been working together to try to get over the hump. And I really believe now, the Bureau of Street Services really believes now that we are over the hump. We will be moving forward now with those items that you have addressed us to achieve. And I will now open it up to DOT and to Mr. Ross to add anything to what I've said.
So Lita Reynolds, LADOT. Not a lot to add to what Ms. Lorenzen has already outlined. The department's role is really as a consumer of the data that will be generated from the street sweepers to go directly to the traffic officers so that they can be as efficient as possible in the way that they sort of discharge their duties, and to make sure that the streets can be swept, but not to punish people after the sweeping has already occurred. So we're working diligently. Our contractor Xerox is in contact with ORPAC to figure out how to make that happen in real time, because the traffic officers really need that information in that way. And that's sort of the department's role in the sort of this effort.
Ted Ross, General Manager with the Information Technology Agency. I think the chair described it quite well. We often throw the expression around, what's a smart city? And so it's almost the big data of our time. There's conferences about smart cities. There's all these discussions around smart cities. And the answer is really quite simple. It's using technology to really improve the lives of its residents. And so this is a situation in which there's a 2-hour window. I live in a neighborhood in LA that's got plenty of apartments. Parking is a premium in that neighborhood. And so you have a 2-hour window where, of course, it's an inconvenience. It could become a cost if you don't move your car in time, and a variety of other issues. So anything we can do to try to assist Department of Transportation and Street Services to get a communication out to people in which that window becomes much smaller, we think all the better. We love the idea of having this posted both online. So there's a web-enabled or, say, mobile-enabled online maps you can see very quickly the types of routes that are in progress, and they'll show you the color as well as the route that's already been swept. And we, of course, also agree with the idea of a push notification, and so we're working towards that discussion also. We think it's really important for there to be the shared data set. So if a resident sees something is swept, then the DOT in the field will also be seeing the same. So you won't run into issues of false positives or false negatives where someone gets a ticket because they thought it was swept and the app told them to, where DOT isn't on the same page. So keeping these things in sync, we also understand is very important.
So the report mentions probably starting with a pilot program. Do you know when you would be able to do that, or do you need to wait for the next report back to this committee to be able to determine that?
Pardon me? I don't know what Jay was going to say, but I don't think we need to necessarily wait for the beginning to work towards that.
We can start the work even now, some of the preparatory work.
Right.
However, I think for the Xerox part, for them to actually be able to better gauge what it will actually take on their, and to begin to program something for the traffic officers, for example, we're going to need some set of the digital route maps before they could even entertain that idea. So it wouldn't start until after October report.
Okay. And the pilot, as envisioned by you, is it a pilot of just BOSS sharing info with DOT, or does it also include the neighborhood or residential notification?
I think as a... Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I believe that the logical progression, the critical path, is to take GPS data and make it available so that DOT and BSS are on the same page and seeing what's been routed and how. Probably the next easiest step is to get it posted online, and then the step after that would be notification. So I think we need to work a little deeper to get an understanding of those different steps. We, in many ways, are at square one on the technology side. I think, or I should say step 2, with step 1 being getting GPS on the sweepers themselves.
I'd just like to add that in order for us to use the technology and all this information before we push it out, there needs to be that testing period internally for us to actually see how the data is coming in and look at the accuracy and the reliability. And once we determine that it's actually highly accurate and reliable, I think it's at that juncture that we can actually push out. So there is a bit of testing period that needs to occur before we can roll it out.
Okay, let me just address that for a second, because the report, I think a couple times, talked about doing this incrementally. I was just looking up incremental in the dictionary app on my iPhone, and incremental talks about very, very small, tiny steps, and I want us to not think in terms of incremental. What I'd like, because I don't want us to start this with 6 streets in 2016 and finally get this citywide in 2040, by which point half the city's not going to have a car, hopefully.
We can't let the Olympics beat this project.
Well, we're saying that about everything, so we're going to have an amazing city in 2024. What I'd like us to think about as you do this report for October is, since we're talking about a tech thing, let's think in terms of a tech model instead of a government model of phasing in, and that would be beta testing. So we're beta testing a system to work some bugs out before we go wider.
I think perhaps the incremental was the wrong word to be used.
Apple doesn't test it with 6 people and then with 600 and then with 6,000. They test it with their beta test group and then it goes.
That is not the Bureau's intention. And as mentioned in the report also, this is going to take some collaboration between the Bureau of Street Services and the General Services Department, because the General Services Department is actually the group that maintains
Right.
all of our sweepers and all the equipment on the sweepers. So we are beginning that as we speak.
Right.
That is something that's already started. But the Bureau of Street Services, prior to the end of September, and we're actually working very hard right now to determine those areas that we're going to test this, so that we have the files that DOT needs so that they can start doing the work that they can do prior to that. And it's not the Bureau's intention for this to be down the road. The reason we're saying pilot at the Bureau is so we don't have to develop all of our 900 routes.
Yeah.
Files at this point. That's going to take time. We think at least 6 months for that.
I get it.
But in 6 months, we should have all of that data. So if we have 3 or 4 neighborhoods and we test it,
Right.
exactly like I said, beta test this, that's what we'll do.
Okay. Yes, please.
You mentioned that the department didn't get any funding regarding the operational and maintenance of the GPS devices and the sensors. So what is the life expectancy of the devices? And at what point do we start figuring out or planning for the maintenance of these devices in the future?
Well, that is what we're going to be doing in the next few months, is we're going to be working with ORPAC. And also, we're not
So
sure.
answer my first question. What's the life expectancy of the devices?
The GPS, I don't have the answer today.
Does
I will get that
anybody have
answer
any
for you.
idea with this stuff?
But I will say this. The GPS is a GPS relay unit inside the vehicle. Maybe, I don't know if you have any information about that.
I need to know this one specifically. But it's usually multiple years.
That's what I
but
thought.
I need to know this
2
one.
3 years before it's outdated or there's new technology? Is
It
that
could be
how
it could be 3 to 7 depending on the specific item.
So you're currently planning for the maintenance of these devices? Is that what you're in conversation?
No, right now,
How are we going to maintain them?
at this point, there is no.
You're looking at me like, come on, guys, answer questions.
I'm going to answer the question. At this point, there is no funding for the maintenance of the GPS units and the
So
sensors on this
at what
equipment.
point do we begin to have that conversation?
I would imagine as soon as they start breaking down, the department's going to put in a request that we'll see in Budget Committee.
That's-
That is
and the
correct.
FSR.
That is correct. That's our collaboration with the General Services Department. The sensors on this equipment is one of the big question marks. I think the GPS units themselves are not as big a question mark, but the sensors are on a machine that's very active, and there's a lot of vibration, and there's a lot of other things happening on this machine. So the sensors on this machine is a little bit of a question mark. So we don't, right now, honestly, council member, we don't know. I mean, right now, everything's working that's on the machines. And it's been on there for about 2 months now. So everything's working and nothing is broken. So we know that much today. So we'll be working with GSD.
So are you coming back next year and asking for the additional, for the $100,000 request to begin the planning of the maintenance of these devices? Or what is your plan moving forward? I think I think it's great that they're being installed, but we shouldn't wait till they're broken to figure out how we're going to maintain.
We're not. We're not doing that. We're working with GSD to determine what they may need to maintain this equipment. And that may come in an FSR sometime in this fiscal year. Or it may come in the next budget cycle. Hopefully, the equipment lasts long enough that we could wait till the next budget cycle. But in all honesty, this is new technology. It's on the equipment that's not a typical, it's not a FedEx truck with just a GPS sensor in it. These are sensors located on parts of this equipment that go up and down and are hydraulically driven and are spinning, and water is flowing through it. And so we're not real sure what's going to happen with this. In all honesty, we're just not. So, but we're going to work with GSD. We are working already with them. We've already communicated with them since we wrote this report.
My second question, Mr. Chair, is has this project, is this something, are you talking to the Innovation and Performance Commission for possible funding of this pilot project? Because I sit on that other committee, and some of the stuff that comes before us for approval, I have to say, I've been one of the few members that have questioned whether this is really innovation and technology. And so this is, I think, is a perfect example that fits into what I believe should be being funded by the commission. I don't know if you've looked into that or not. I'm happy to support that effort as a way to get you some funding to begin incorporating the pilot project.
I would agree. The ITA was really brought into this fairly recently, so we're still trying to get our legs under us to understand the kind of data the GPS provides, what an application we need to provide, et cetera. But I couldn't agree with you more. I think
Some of the
this
stuff
is...
that's coming before is like staff training. I mean, you're pushing it, and I've been patient and kind of figure out where you're going with all this. But I think this is a perfect pilot project for you to consider, for the commission to consider funding for.
I would agree.
I agree too. And actually the Bureau of Street Services did receive an innovation grant for our pothole response. So we already have put in,
The maintenance part of it that you didn't get funding for in the regular fiscal budget process, but I think this is a perfect fit for that type of effort.
And
It
it
may-
really
Stuff
affects
that's
Angelinos.
For me, is questionable.
definitely that. And then, like I said, when GSD tells us how much money it's going to cost, we'll have a much better, we'll be able to put our minds around this much better. But we are working directly with GSD.
And another element too is to ensure I'm sure general services and street services consider is just have enough spare so that if there is an outage,
Correct.
that street sweeper isn't down for a month or whatever it may be. So that it feels like it's a reliable service. Worst case scenario, it means someone's still blocked for 2 hours, but it would be a shame to have a transponder go down and a certain neighborhood just isn't receiving the service that another neighborhood's receiving because their transponder happens to work.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple low-tech questions on the same system. I assume this issue really came up because real people see a street sweeper go by and they assume they're done and then they park. So even if this system would notify you 10 minutes after a street sweeper went by, I don't think we would want any of those folks getting tickets if they show up 30 seconds later and park there. So I assume the ability to not get ticketed would have to occur right after the street sweeper. Otherwise, you'd help the tech-savvy people, and you'd screw the people that were the ones that originally probably brought this forward.
That's correct. So I think that's really why DOT has Xerox working directly with Bureau of Street Services vendor to get a system that goes directly from the sweepers to the traffic officers' handhelds and other devices that they use to actually write the tickets, because they need that information really in real time. It's a different need than the public notification system, which is going to have a little bit more of a buffer on it for a whole variety of reasons. But I think that's why I agree, and we're working towards getting that level of precision for the officers.
And obviously, the people writing the tickets now, sometimes they're ahead of the vehicle, sometimes they're half an hour after the vehicle. They'd obviously have to always be ahead of the vehicle. Otherwise, we wouldn't be ticketing people, and they would realize we wouldn't ticket them, and then they wouldn't move out of the way for the street
Correct.
sweeper, which also would be a disastrous way for this to work out. So I assume we've looked at how we can coordinate so people writing the tickets always stay ahead of the vehicle.
Yes.
And one other thing, not exactly on point, well, it may be half on point. So I have an area where we have a number of kosher restaurants in a way that is rarely found elsewhere in the city, and very few delis still survive, and there are a couple of those in this area as well. Factor's Deli, Label's Deli. And they have a noon to 2 o'clock street sweeping. Is there any way that we can adjust that in some way? This would be an improvement because obviously if the street sweeper went by at 12:15, you'd save an hour and 45 minutes. But it's still a huge nuisance and expensive for these places who get a lot less business on street sweeping days.
This is,
Anyway.
I'll answer that question.
I'll take the street sweeper.
As I earlier mentioned, that was one of the initial areas in which the Bureau of Street Services thought that this GPS system would help us to address. It doesn't need, the issues with the parking requires a level of data accuracy that is way higher than to do that. We can look at efficiencies and then perhaps request that signs be changed. But that real-time notification for people requires a level of data accuracy that's extremely high. And that's really the issue that we're going to be talking with GSD about. Can this equipment be dependable enough to provide us that data? And if it isn't, and it does break, what do we do at that point? So those are the issues that we really have to now address with GSD and with the vendors too, with ORPAC, because we're not sure if ORPAC can even provide some of these things we're going to be asking them to provide. Because the level of data accuracy that we expected was to do exactly like, to address those issues. To be able to look at the parking, the shape files of the routes, and to say, okay, what can we adjust to make this more efficient and to make it friendlier to our residents and to constituents and businesses out there. That's what we intend to do, and we will start doing that now. We are actually starting to use that data now as we look at this.
I mean, I'm assuming that, I get off the Expo line at Expo Bundy,
Mhm.
and I call Lyft. I can see exactly where the driver is as he's
Correct.
coming. I'm assuming our technology will be that good.
And I'm going to make that, I would love that to be the case, exactly. That's what we would like to have be the case.
Technology will show the device as well as show sweeper down, sweeper up, and items like that. I think the intent is, another expression often used regarding the Internet of Things. It will not only be smarter from the perspective of making residents' lives better, but it will be smarter in the sense of giving street services, real-time data in regards to its devices out in the field, what they're doing, when they're doing it, how they're doing it, so they could work to optimize it with data analysis afterwards.
Which is what we're
And
doing.
that's sort of the next step question. This obviously would be a pretty resident-friendly response. In much of my district, residential and business abut. And so if you're going up and down Pico in a section where there's a lot of restaurant business, the residents may find that, okay, it's 12:15, we can all go move our cars. The customers may have no idea. So the question is how we get the word to them in some way. Particularly, a lot of the customers are seniors, probably less likely to use apps. So how do we make that actually work for them?
That is, the solutions I provide show the inadequacy of just what you described. Certainly we can have a web-enabled map and one can take a look at it. Certainly we can create a notification where you maybe tag an address and it gives you a notification. But we do want to have additional conversations because it's still a subset of our population. Ultimately, we need something that physically shows there. And that's not something that we have an answer for just yet. But it's very duly noted that what would be ideal is something on the street itself that's letting us understand. I can pontificate and I could come up with hypotheticals, and I've got some clever, probably off-the-wall ideas. But I would still agree that even if we implement this solution in a reasonable time frame, it doesn't fully satisfy, I think, the need.
And that would probably be obviously not a need that you'd have in every block in the district, but you'd have a few blocks where communicating that would be particularly helpful. So I'm glad that you're thinking about that as well.
In concept, one thing that's always there are items like streetlights. May not be the greenest solution, and I'm certainly signing up another department that's not in the room, but is there some mechanism in which we can take information and physically show something on the street? So we can try to come up with a lot of ideas on how to integrate across departments and across agencies to come up with those kinds of solutions, but anything we come up with now probably has its pros and cons, and so we'd want to work through it a little better.
Very good.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm very excited about this and very much looking forward to it. And thank you for being a champion on this. Ever since I got on the council, this is, I think, one of the first things we talked about, and it's been over a year, and we're at this point. And I share the excitement about finally bringing some of our systems into the 21st century. And I concur with Chairman Bonin about. While pilot projects and incremental is good, we hope it's in bigger chunks. And actually, Councilmember Koretz already started discussion of exactly what I wanted to ask about. And it's, I don't want to muddy the waters or add anything else because I think this initiative in itself needs to be done first. And I'm very excited about the results from it. But just to give you a preview of, and actually you kind of answered it a little bit, but actually to give you a preview of what I'm going to start asking for once we start getting data sets is, and I'm sure with these data sets you're going to start rerouting the whole Sweet Sweeper to begin with, but if you could reassess, like Councilman Koretz said about in the restaurant row from 12 to 2, and in a previous meeting, I talked about at the mental health courts on Mondays, when doctors and psychiatrists come and testify. If we could start reassessing the whole overall times and dates of the existing parking restrictions. And on that note, why not even start looking at a smarter planning or scheduling of street sweeping overall? meaning, and you don't have to answer this now unless you have the answer already, is that maybe in commercial sectors, why can't we do street sweeping at night when there's almost no traffic? So if we could start looking at, I know we need the basics first and get all these data, but I want to eventually go even bigger and expand. So.
Okay. So we'll get a report back in October 12th. So we'll keep it in committee, Mr. Clerk, until then, and then we'll hear the report back. Ms. Reynolds?
Can I ask just one question? I know earlier this year, we had a couple of things come before this committee that resulted in budget requests, and the committee's sort of guidance on those issues was very helpful in ultimately getting them into the budget. So October is right around the time that most departments are putting together their budget requests. So for example, the program that Council members Koretz and Rue were talking about would actually entail, it's actually a pretty large-scale undertaking that would involve some real capital expenses. When you're talking about hundreds of thousands of signs around the city that might need to get moved around, it would be really timely to sort of think about in that conversation what kinds of budget guidance the committee might give to the departments, because it would be something that we could actually put together as a multi-departmental budget package. Great.
Okay, thanks very much. So that concludes our regular meeting. We have a special meeting. So we will adjourn the regular. We will convene the special meeting. So this is a two-item meeting. We have a couple speaker cards. 2 minutes, Mr. Herman. 2 minutes, Mr. Spindler. 2 minutes, Ms. Ramirez.
There we go. So that's why. Oh, it's too bad. What? Yeah. No. I'm just saying this. Whenever there's CD5, I put up my CD5. So anyway, no, he's leaving now, so we have to take the sign down. So anyway, this oversized vehicle bullshit. This is really a bunch of people who found a way to get free rent by living in the mobile homes. So I'm just going to love the ACLU class action lawsuit. I mean, it's just, they're thanking you for this, and they're egging you on, and you're going to file this, and then they're going to file against the city, and then you're going to get your outside counsel, and then you're going to try to bullshit your way that this is a public safety issue. You lose. And then you're going to get millions of dollars of counsel fees and class action costs, because you're doing this in a discriminatory way, targeting vehicles that are in excess of 22 feet and over 7 feet in height. That's a standard mobile home. And you see, under the federal guidelines and federal transportation, you have a right to live in a mobile home. You have a right to stop and park a mobile home. You have a right to sleep in it as you do a car. In fact, a mobile home is considered a domicile. That's the Supreme Court decisions. They've always ruled that. So now you're towing away a person's house. So you see, your stupidity extends so far now into the galaxy of fucking stupidity that now you've got like 30, 40 of these now. So really, the ACLU thanks you. I also thank you in my federal lawsuit, because as you can see, you're going to pay all of us to live here. I just wanted to get the fuck out and settle for $975, but you didn't want to, so just keep adding those legal bills to Paul Krikorian.
Wonderful. Thank you, and I thank you. So I hope the federal court lawsuits get settled before the time, or in time, just so that I'm planning to buy one of those camper-sized vehicles. It's difficult to live on the streets. It is very, very difficult. So I was thinking of getting or purchasing a oversized vehicle type like a motorhome. But the thing that concerns me is, where do I park it? I don't want to park it in a gang-infested area, certainly not in East LA where all the asses live. And at the same token, I was also checking on the structure of the mobile home to see, can they kick the door in, and is it easy to break into? Because the gangbangers know how to get in. They know how to break into anything and everything. I've learned that the hard way. So again, if I were to purchase a mobile home, where can I safely park it without having these goddamn gangbangers and wetbacks break into it? And changos. So where can I park it that I will be not breaking the law? Because I am a legal law-abiding citizen, as you already know. Where do I park? The city attorney gives me that smirk. Okay, so I'd like to know, if I were to purchase a nice, beautiful home, where can I park it safely without having to get all these tickets or the lovely officers knocking on my door, my window? And of course, I would always be compliant. Officer Duarte and Officer Graciano, you know I would. I respect you very much. So, and all the LAPD officers. So, I just want to know, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, council members and mayor, where can I safely park a nice motorhome that I will not be jeopardizing myself or causing any problems or not being compliant? I hope you have a nice area in the near future that new mobile homes can park if they are homeless, park safely, secure, and protected, where no goddamn wetback or gangbanger can break into and cause me problems. God bless Donald Trump in America, man. God bless Donald Trump. Thank you.
So now in the resolution of this code section 22507, it's very obvious that it's discriminatory. And I want the ACLU for the record at 1313 West 8th Street, Los Angeles, California, 90017. Telephone, all of you who are listening, 213-977-5206. ACLU, our rights are being violated by the Department of the General Manager of Department of Transportation, LADOT, for state mobility, for pedestrians, for cyclists, for vehicles, all under the grounds that we shall be restricted under Municipal Code Section 80.69.4, which does not allow us to exceed 22 feet, or as they say, length in over of 7 feet or 84 inches, whatever comes fucking first. But bullshit to West Jefferson Boulevard and to West Adams Boulevard. Fuck you. That's right. We want to park our vehicles and live happily ever after, like all of you in your white gated bullshit, hypocritical jurisdiction of what you call a home. My home is a car. My home is a car. Do you fucking get it? The same as Miss Antonia brought out. She's going to buy a vehicle, and I suggest anyone listening, as long as you're under 22 feet in a motor home, you will not be ticketed, you will not be towed. Thank you, ACLU, and you more so, Paul Koretz, and that puto Weezar, who he's not here today, to hear the complaint. We object, and you must sustain for taking actions against restricted streets, because we, the public, under the Ralph M. Brown Act, as it says, we, the people, do not ascertain you assholes to these restrictions under ordinances.
Okay, that concludes public comment. Colleagues, Council District 8 has come to testify in favor of the two items here. My recommendation is we move items 1 and 2 on consent. Yep. Without objection, that's the direction of the committee. Special meeting of the Transportation Committee is adjourned. Thank you.